My wife said I worked too much. She assured me that she loved me, that she valued my work, that it was all for our family. Then I accidentally received a payment notification. She had withdrawn $10,000 from our account and transferred it to an unknown person. At that moment, I realized I was living with a traitor, and decided she would get what she deserved. Hannah and I had been married for 8 years. We lived in a spacious colonial in Fairfield County, Connecticut, the kind of place with good schools and manicured lawns that promised the American dream. I was a senior investment manager at Blackstone Capital in Manhattan, and she worked part-time as an interior designer, mostly for friends and referrals. When we first met at a mutual friend's wedding in Newport, Hannah had captivated me with her easy laugh and the way she seemed to actually listen when others spoke. 9 months later, I proposed on the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset. 2 years after that, we bought our house. I worked hard, sometimes 14-hour days. The 5:47 a.m. train into the city became my second home. I'd return on the 8:35 p.m., often catching Hannah already in bed, scrolling through her phone. On weekends, I'd frequently disappear into my home office to prepare for Monday's meetings. She complained sometimes, but I always reminded her that everything I did was building our future. Just 2 more years of this pace, I'd promise. Then we can talk about starting a family. She'd smile and nod, but lately, that smile hadn't reached her eyes. Last Tuesday began like any other day. I kissed Hannah goodbye while she was still half asleep, caught my train, and dove into back-to-back meetings. Around 3 p.m., my phone buzzed with a banking notification. Withdrawal, $1,500 from joint checking. I frowned. It wasn't unusual for Hannah to make purchases, but she typically used her credit card for larger expenses and would mention anything substantial. I dismissed it and returned to my presentation. At 4:12 p.m., another notification, withdrawal, $2,000 from joint checking. By 5:30 p.m., 3 more withdrawals had appeared, totaling another $6,500. I called Hannah. No answer. I texted, "Everything okay?" Seeing some large withdrawals. Her response came 20 minutes later, "Just some house repairs and new furniture for the sunroom. Tell you about it tonight. Love you." It seemed reasonable enough. Hannah had been talking about redoing the sunroom for months. Still, something felt off. The timing of the withdrawals, spaced apart as if to avoid triggering fraud alerts, nagged at me. That night, I missed my usual train and didn't make it home until after 10 p.m. Hannah was already asleep, or at least pretending to be. I slipped into bed beside her, exhausted but mind still racing with questions about the money. Around 2 a.m., I was awakened by the soft buzz of Hannah's phone on her nightstand. In our early years, I would never have considered looking at her messages. But something, intuition, perhaps, made me reach for it. The screen showed a text from someone named Ryan, "Thanks for the transfer, babe." My blood ran cold. Babe? Hannah shifted in her sleep, and I carefully returned the phone to her nightstand. I lay awake for hours, mind spinning with possibilities, each more painful than the last. By morning, I'd made a decision: I wouldn't confront her yet. I needed to understand what I was dealing with first. I called my office and told them I was taking a personal day. After Hannah left for a client meeting in Greenwich, I sat at our kitchen island with my laptop and accessed our joint accounts. The pattern was clear and devastating. Small withdrawals at first, beginning about 11 months ago. $500 here, $800 there. Then gradually increasing in frequency and amount. In total, she had transferred nearly $35,000 over the past year. I searched our home for clues, looking through drawers and closets like a man possessed. In her desk, I found nothing unusual except a business card for Ryan Matthews, financial consultant, with a Hartford address. I photographed it with my phone. Then I did something I'd never imagined doing in our marriage. I used Hannah's birthday to unlock her iPad, which she'd left charging in the kitchen. Her messages with Ryan went back 14 months. They'd apparently met at a design conference in Boston. The early texts were friendly, then flirtatious. By month 3, they were explicitly romantic. I scrolled with growing nausea, but it was the messages from the past 2 months that truly broke me. Ryan, when are you going to leave him? Hannah, soon. I just need to move a bit more money first. He doesn't even notice with how busy he is. Ryan, what if he checks the accounts? Hannah, he never does. Too busy making money to notice how I spend it. Besides, I always have receipts ready if he asks. New couch, kitchen renovation, whatever. Ryan, you're brilliant, babe. That's why I love you. Hannah, I don't love him. Just need to wait a little longer, and everything will be ours. Ryan, after the divorce, you'll get half anyway. Hannah, he's like an ATM, but soon will be free. I sat there, staring at the screen until it went dark. 8 years of marriage reduced to cold calculation. I thought about the nights I'd worked late to afford the life she wanted. The vacations I'd arranged to reconnect. The anniversary gifts I'd carefully selected. All while she plotted with her lover to take everything. I closed the iPad and called the one person I knew I could trust, my college roommate, Andrew, who had become a divorce attorney in Stamford. Meet me at my office in an hour, he said after I gave him the abbreviated version. And Mark, don't do anything stupid in the meantime. Andrew's office overlooked the Long Island Sound. On another day, I might have appreciated the view. Today, I barely noticed it. First things first, Andrew said, leaning forward in his leather chair. You need to protect yourself financially. He outlined a plan. I would open new individual accounts at a different bank. I would transfer all funds except for the minimum required to keep the joint accounts open. I would cancel joint credit cards and request new ones in my name only. What about the house? I asked. My name's on the mortgage, but we're both on the deed. We'll get to that, Andrew assured me. For now, focus on securing liquid assets. And Mark, document everything. Screenshots, bank statements, all of it. I nodded, feeling hollow inside. And don't confront her yet, he added. The element of surprise is your only advantage right now. I spent the rest of the day executing Andrew's plan. By evening, I had moved nearly $180,000 to accounts Hannah couldn't access, canceled our joint credit cards, and changed the passwords on all our financial platforms. Then I did something Andrew hadn't suggested. I texted Ryan Matthews from my phone, "Hello Ryan. This is Mark, Hannah's husband. I think we should talk." The 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared. No response came. When Hannah returned home that evening, I greeted her with a kiss and asked about her day, as if nothing had changed. She spoke enthusiastically about her client meeting and the new project she'd landed. That's wonderful, I said, pouring her a glass of the Pinot Noir she favored. We should celebrate this weekend. Her smile seemed genuine. For a moment, I almost doubted what I'd discovered. Almost. By the way, she said casually, setting down her glass, did you see those bank notifications yesterday? Just the sunroom renovation we talked about. The contractor needed cash deposits. The lie slid so smoothly from her lips that I marveled at her skill. How many other lies had I believed over the years? Of course, I nodded. No problem. I trust you completely. Her eyes flickered with something, guilt. Triumph. I couldn't tell anymore. That night, I slept in the guest room, claiming a migraine needed darkness and solitude. In reality, I couldn't bear to lie beside her. The next morning, I left early, telling Hannah I had a breakfast meeting in the city. Instead, I drove to Hartford, to the address on Ryan's business card. Matthews Financial Consulting occupied a small office in a renovated Victorian house. The receptionist informed me that Mr. Matthews was with a client but could see me in 30 minutes if I cared to wait. I sat in the small waiting area, rehearsing what I would say. When a door opened and a man in his early 30s emerged, showing an elderly couple out, I knew immediately it was Ryan. Tall, with carefully styled dark hair and the kind of confidence that comes from never facing consequences. "Mr. Matthews," I said, standing as the couple left. "I'm Mark Ellison." Recognition flashed across his face, followed quickly by alarm. "I believe you've been consulting with my wife, Hannah." The receptionist glanced up with interest. "Perhaps we should speak privately," Ryan suggested, gesturing to his office. Once inside, with the door closed, his demeanor changed. "Look, I don't know what Hannah told you." "She hasn't told me anything," I interrupted. "But I know everything. The affair, the money, the plans for after our divorce." He sank into his chair. "Mark, this isn't what you think. I have all the messages, Ryan. All the transfers. Documented and already in my lawyer's hands." His face paled. "What do you want from me?" It was a fair question. What did I want? Revenge? Justice? An explanation for why this stranger thought he was entitled to destroy my life? "I want you to understand something," I said, keeping my voice level. "Hannah isn't going to get half of anything in the divorce. Not the house, not my retirement accounts, not a single penny beyond what the law absolutely requires. And based on the evidence of her defrauding me, that might not be much." Ryan swallowed hard. "You can keep the money she's already given you," I continued. "Consider it payment for showing me who she really is before we had children." I stood to leave but paused at the door. "One more thing. She's going to need somewhere to stay very soon. I assume your place is available." The look of panic that crossed his face told me everything I needed to know. 3 days passed. I continued the charade at home while finalizing arrangements with Andrew. Hannah seemed oblivious, though she mentioned having trouble reaching Ryan about some investment advice. On Friday, I took the day off again. After Hannah left for a meeting in New Haven, I changed all the locks on the house and arranged for a security company to install a new system that afternoon. Around 2 p.m., Hannah called. "My card was declined at lunch," she said, confusion evident in her voice. "And I can't access our accounts online. Is something wrong with the bank?" "No," I replied calmly. "The accounts are fine. Your access has been revoked." A long silence followed. "What are you talking about?" "I know about Ryan, Hannah. I know about the money. I know everything." Her breathing changed. "Mark, I can explain. Save it. Your things will be packed and waiting on the porch when you get home. The locks have been changed. You can't do this." Her voice rose. "Half of everything is mine." "Check your texts," I said, then hung up. I had sent her screenshots of her own messages to Ryan, the ones where she detailed her plans to take half after divorcing me. 20 minutes later, my phone exploded with notifications. Hannah calling. Hannah texting. Ryan calling. I ignored them all and continued packing her clothes into suitcases. By the time Hannah's car screeched into the driveway 3 hours later, I had moved all her personal belongings to the covered porch and was sitting in the living room with a glass of scotch. She pounded on the door. "Mark. Open this door right now." I watched through the window as she tried her key, then cursed when it didn't work. "You can't do this," she shouted. "This is my house too." I opened the door but remained in the doorway, blocking entry. "Was it your house when you were stealing from me to fund your affair? Was it your house when you were planning to take everything in the divorce?" Her face crumpled. "It wasn't like that. Ryan and I, it just happened. The money was for investments. Investments, I repeated flatly. Is that what you call hotel rooms in Hartford? Tears began streaming down her face. Please, Mark. Let me explain. We can work through this. There's nothing to work through. It's over. Where am I supposed to go? She demanded, anger replacing tears. I believe Ryan has a lovely condo in West Hartford. Though he might be reconsidering his investment in you now that the money has dried up. Her expression confirmed my suspicion. He's not answering my calls. Imagine that. She wiped at her tears with the back of her hand. You've ruined everything. I laughed then, a hollow sound even to my own ears. That's rich, coming from you. I'll sue you for everything, she threatened. I'll tell everyone what you did. Go ahead. My lawyer has copies of all your messages, all the fraudulent transfers. Contest the divorce if you want to make your betrayal public record. She stared at me, the beautiful face I had once loved now twisted with rage and panic. What happened to you? You're not the man I married. No, I agreed. That man was a fool who trusted you. He's gone now. I closed the door and watched through the window as Hannah screamed, cried, and finally began loading her suitcases into her car. Just before pulling away, she looked back at the house, our dream home, with an expression I couldn't read. Regret? Hatred? Perhaps both. That night, I sat alone in my living room, surrounded by the remnants of a life built on lies. I should have felt triumphant. I had caught her before she could take everything. I had turned the tables. I had won. Instead, I felt empty. The phone calls and texts continued for weeks. Hannah begging for another chance. Hannah threatening legal action. Hannah simply crying into my voicemail. I blocked her number eventually. Andrew handled the divorce proceedings efficiently. Hannah contested at first but backed down when presented with the evidence. She received a small settlement, far less than the half she had planned on, and disappeared from my life. 6 months later, I ran into a mutual friend who mentioned that Hannah was living in a small apartment in Bridgeport and working full-time at a design firm. Ryan Matthews had apparently moved to Chicago with his actual fiancée. I felt nothing at the news. No satisfaction. No vindication. Not even anger anymore. That evening, as I sat alone in my perfectly quiet house, I realized something. Hannah had taken something from me after all. Not money. Not property. But something more valuable, my belief in people. My capacity for trust. I had won the battle, but at what cost? Sometimes I wonder if Hannah ever thinks about what she lost, not the house or the money, but the person who had loved her completely, who would have given her anything if she'd only asked. And sometimes, in the darkest hours of the night, I wonder who really got revenge on whom.